Hello everyone, my name is Allison. I am a knitter based in Nebraska, and this is my little corner on the internet where I share everything that I've been working on in like the crafting fiber yarn world. It has been absolutely ages since I have done just a regular old school sit down podcast episode, so we are going to jump straight in with finished objects. So first things first, I have a big old shawl. You won't be able to see me at all, but I have started and finished a big shawl. So I designed this little shawl pattern. I haven't named it yet. If you have like any good name ideas, drop them down in the comments. I'm trying to think of something like extremely fall, very cozy, like campfire, relax kind of situation, because this is a very big, very fall, like big chunky warm shawl, so it needs like a big chunky warm name to go along with it. But I have been working on this for ages because I've been tinkering with this color work panel for the shawl since December maybe. So I started this like when it was still cold enough to actually want to wear a shawl. We are now like firmly in June, so this, I guess, has taken me 6 months to figure out, but I have a few of my swatches that I have done throughout the thought process of this shawl. I knew off the bat that I wanted to do this like main pearl texture, like the knit pearl texture for kind of the bulk of this shawl. Let me back up. So I knew when I was thinking of this shawl pattern, I had a general idea of what I wanted it to look like. And this is kind of how a lot of like my self-drafted or designed patterns work, is I know the gist of what I'm looking for. So I knew I wanted it to just be like an all over texture for the majority of the shawl, and then use color work to change the color of the shawl for the rest, like basically the edging, like the widest part. So I had that in mind from the very beginning of how I wanted the overall gist of the pattern to work, but I spent a lot of time playing around with the color work. So I'll show you my first attempt. This is obviously it's either a gigantic swatch or it's a little necktie. I wonder, actually, it does fit as a little necktie. I didn't plan for this to be like a little neck handkerchief, but I guess it works. But I knit this kind of gigantic swatch to test out this color work. So I had done, and I'll zoom in so you can actually see what this looks like. I had done like a slip stitch pattern to switch from the main color, which is white or cream here, to the gray. And as I was working on this, I was really happy with how it looked as I finished this swatch. And this swatch also used the same like increases. It uses the same like general shaping so that I would understand how it would look for like a full big sized shawl. So I was really happy with this when I finished the swatch. So I got started on knitting the big giant full sized version. This version is knit in Purl Soho's Season Alpaca, which they label as a sport weight yarn, but I think it feels much more like a DK weight yarn. But this is 100% alpaca. It is so buttery soft, like it is unbelievably smooth on the skin and very, very drapey. Like it's really got a lot of nice movement to it. So I had picked up 2 skeins of the gray color and 1 of this kind of burgundy color, and I will put the color names on the screen because I don't remember them off the top of my head. And I have the tiniest amount of the gray left, and I was playing cast off yarn chicken for the purple. So it is definitely a almost precisely 3 skein project, but as I was working on this large version of it, I was working on it and like got it to just about the point where I wanted to do the color work to change the colors. And I realized that this color work it was just gonna be a little underwhelming at a full size. Like as I got this bigger and bigger and bigger, I realized like the color work itself also needed to be bigger. So you can see this color work is very different to the original of what I had planned out with all of these slip stitches. And these like slip stitch stripes, that's quite the tongue twister, slip stitch stripes took me ages of like ripping back and redoing it until I got it to how I wanted it to look. And then I got to the big shawl and realized that it just like didn't have the visual impact that I was hoping for to do it on like the larger scale. So I went back to the drawing board and did a very kind of sloppy little miniature swatch. So I have the big boy and the teeny tiny one where I went through and basically just did one set of the increases. This is just like scrap sock yarn that I had in my stash, and each side, so like this triangle and this triangle, are two very slightly different takes on the same colorwork pattern. I basically knew that like since I was going to be swatching this again, that I might as well like make the best use out of it and just like consider each half of the swatch a different swatch. So I basically tried two similar but not exactly the same colorwork patterns to see how they would look, and I decided that this one, which is basically the same for each stripe, versus this one, which is slightly different for like the top couple of stripes, I wanted to see if it could kind of like do more of a gradient, and I just don't think that it didn't have like the visual impact that I was hoping for. So I decided that this pattern was the one to go for, and I finally finished this shawl literally 6 months later. I am going to attempt to wear this for a little bit, but we are in June now. It is too warm to be wearing an alpaca shawl, but I want to show it off slightly. So here we go. I wanted this to be like, you could wear it with like a jean jacket if you wanted to, or you can wear it like dead winter, big puffy coat, like full on, or like wrap it around your shoulders, or for me, wrapping it around my shoulders as I work from my office, which is in the basement. It gets very cold in the winter. I wanted this to be not bulky, but I wanted it to be like a big shawl. Like I wanted it to be a big, very cozy scarf situation. Let me straighten her out. I didn't realize I have a lot of this like eggplanty color going on. I'll show you a little bit more of it later, but I'm also wearing a shirt that's like the same color. But I am really, really happy with how this ended up turning out. So I am going to be writing up a pattern for this. I have all of my notes. I just haven't put it into like pattern form yet. I figure I've got some time because not a lot of people are going to be wanting to knit a big warm shawl in the middle of summer. So I've got, let's say, until September to get it together. But if this is something you are at all interested in test knitting, please let me know in the comments. I know that a full-size shawl is a little bit of an ask for a test knit, but it is a pretty speedy knit once you get going. It uses pretty big needles. It'll use DK weight yarn. I'm calling it DK weight, even though this sample is knit in sport weight. And when I am like ready to start the test knit, I will probably put all of that information up on Instagram. So if you're not following me on Instagram, make sure to follow me on Instagram. It's at Allison Marie Knits, and it'll be very obvious, very easy to find when I am ready to start test knitting. But when I start test knitting, I am going to be knitting a second sample for myself, and this time it's going to be in Madeline Tosh. I think it's just Tosh DK. I wanted to choose a wool option because this is alpaca, and I wanted to do it in a brand that's a little bit easier to find. For me, like Pearl Soho, I have to order it online. I know that they have a store, I think, in New York City, but Madeline Tosh is available like at every yarn store for the most part, and they have tons and tons and tons and tons of different colors. I feel like whenever I'm browsing on Ravelry and I'm looking through like yarn suggestions for a pattern, 9 times out of 10 you are going to see Madeline Tosh there. So this will actually be my first time using Madeline Tosh yarn, and I have 2 shades here. This darker color is called Cactus. I definitely was picturing a slightly brighter green when I ordered this, but I do think it's still really beautiful. And then this light color is called Horn. So I'm going to be using these together to knit my second sample of this shawl to kind of see how is like the texture of it going to change, what is it going to look like, and I want to offer a second size. So I have 2 skeins of each color. So this was a 3 skein project. I'm gonna do a 4 skein and see how it looks. I'm going to reverse the idea of like the color work on this one. So this one has light on top, ends with a very dark color. For my second sample, I'm going to start with the darker color and end with the light. And really the only thing that is going to change for the second size is that the second color, like the second section, is just going to be longer. Jack might be joining us here. Do you want to sit down? Nah. Like I said, the darker green color is called Cactus. The lighter, like basically it's like a whitishy gray, is called Horn, and it has these really beautiful, like not quite like funfetti, sprinkly kind of speckles throughout it. It's much more subtle. It's like a very chill version of a speckled yarn, and it actually is kind of nice, even though that this green is a little bit darker than I had imagined it to be. I was also toying with the idea of doing a black and white version, and this is kind of in between both. It's like such a dark green that it kind of reads as black. So best of both worlds. But I will be casting on my second version of this shawl probably soon. It's a very popcorny kind of knit because it has these like garter stitch stripes throughout, so you kind of keep wanting to get to like the next section of striping. It's a very intuitive knit, I think, so I am looking forward to casting on my next version. But I think that is all I have to say on my to be named yet shawl pattern. And like I said, please let me know in the comments if that is something that you would be interested in test knitting. The test knit will probably start maybe late July, early August, so that you have, you know, at least a full month to knit the shawl. I think it probably took me 2-ish weeks of monogamous knitting, and I work full-time and don't have that much time to knit every single day. So it's not really like a huge time suck of a shawl, even though it is quite a big boy. But let me know if that is something that is of interest to you. I had quite the morning this morning, caking up tons of yarn. Not tons, I did what, 1, 2, 3, 4 skeins of yarn, but I was watching Knitting Traditions. I was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and cake up everything that I need for my other projects that I'm working on. But before we get into that, I have one last finished objects, which are these Weekendy Shorty socks from Summer Lee. So these are a free pattern from Summer Lee. They are extremely fun. They're meant to be like use lots of different colors and have mismatching socks that just, they don't match. And I have a lot of different colors going on here, but I just finished these up. I really needed like a palette cleanser, and it had been ages since I've knit a like shorty pair of socks, and also it's been ages since I've done a Fish Lips Kiss heel. So the heel in the pattern, I believe, is an Afterthought heel, but I went ahead and did Fish Lips Kiss because I prefer it, and I have used like tons and tons of scraps. Let me see. I know I don't know what these two for this toe is, but I know most of these colors. So the bright red at the top of this is Ahoy by Knit Picks. This next kind of purpley color is Mondoim by Neighborhood Fiber Company. The white on both socks is Knit Picks sock yarn in whatever their white is called. The blue is Knit Picks in Frost. Both of these, I believe, are, no, actually, the gold is also Knit Picks. I think it's called Treasure. This kind of purpley color I got from an indie dyer on Etsy. I ordered like a mystery mini skein set years and years ago. I will put the link to their Etsy down below if I can find it, but this kind of purpley color and this very cool toned bluey purple are both from that Etsy dyer. I do not know what the names of these colors are. And then on this version, the hot pink is Neighborhood Fiber Company in Charles Village. The green is a little bit of leftover from my sideline shawl. This is Sorella yarn in the shade Aloe, which is a very old spring tonal. And then all of these are Knit Picks again. These two pink versions are from one of their striped sock yarns from, again, years ago. Their self-striping sock yarn doesn't tend to repeat, I don't think. Like, I don't think they have the same stripe colors very often. They tend to be like seasonal. And same with the blue here. I think that was from the same self-striping yarn set. These truly just like flew off the needles. They were my like car project, my like very tired, cannot think to do anything besides stockinette project. I got these done, I think, in like a week, and they are shorties. It's not like that would take all that long, but it's been ages since I've knit a sock like this, and I'm really happy with them. They are just like the most fun, silly little mismatched socks you ever did see. And I'm actually wearing, I know I'm not wearing a knit shirt today. I am wearing, I'm not gonna try to like hike my leg up so you can see my sock, but I'm wearing my Rustic Cable Socks today, which is a pattern by Knitting Traditions that I knit a couple of summers ago in Neighborhood Fiber Company's sock yarn. It is like my all-time favorite sock yarn. I think it's the best. It feels so good and it's worn really, really well, but I have had to patch the heels on both of these socks because it's worn through in the exact same spot. But these socks are not knit with any kind of like reinforcement to the heel. So normally what I do with a heel flap and gusset is do like the Eye of Partridge stitch or something on the heel to give it a little bit more like texture to it that holds up better to wear. For these, they're just like plain stockinette, and they both wore through like exactly at the bottom of the heel. So that is definitely something to be aware of. There's no nylon in the Neighborhood Fiber Company sock yarn. So I would definitely make sure to either use like a wool reinforcement thread while you're knitting the heel, or to do like a thicker heel texture so that it doesn't wear through so easily. But I did a pretty simple like duplicate stitch on both of these socks and it's worn pretty well so far. So I'm really excited about that. And it basically inspired me to get out another skein of Neighborhood Fiber Company's sock yarn to knit a similar pair of these socks, but with that reinforced heel so that I don't wear through the heels again. So I caked this up this morning as well. I have not cast on yet. But this is their sock yarn in the color Waverly, which again, very like eggplanty purple, but I'm super into it. And I think these will look really, really beautiful in a very simple like cable top sock. Even though it is like basically summer at this point, I've just been really in the mood for cables lately. I'm just like on a cable streak. So I think these are absolutely going to become cable socks. Whether or not they become another pair of rustic cable socks is to be decided, but I went ahead and caked up I like separated it into two different balls to theoretically knit toe up and try to knit longer socks. I know I talked a little bit about My most recent pair of socks, I knit longer than I would normally. They don't fit very well, and I will link to that down below. But I am tempted to try some like leg shaping on my socks. So you can see that from me eyeballing this as I was skeining, I didn't do a very good job of knitting or of splitting this exactly in half. This one is definitely smaller. So I will knit with this one, the smaller one first, knit this to try to use up as much of the yarn as possible, and then I will knit the second one to match, and then all of the leftover yarn will come from one ball instead of having two tiny little leftover balls. Now, for works in progress, I have a few swatches to show you. So I have been thinking basically from the beginning of the year that I wanted to knit a springy cardigan, and here we are in June, and I think that ship has kind of sailed, but I had the idea at first to knit a striped cardigan, and I was going to make up my own pattern. I was testing out this Knit Picks yarn that I've had in my stash for ages. I don't remember what it's called, but it is their like wool and cotton mix, which I thought would be really nice for spring and summer. And I'm pretty sure, I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure that it says it's machine wash and dryable. And so I tested that with my swatch and it did not go very well. So it's not like fully felted, especially the wool and cotton yarn, but I was trying the stripes with their sock yarn held double because this cream color yarn is a DK weight. And look how badly it felted. I've never seen, I have washed and dried my Knit Pick sock yarn in the washer and dryer many, many times as like fully done pairs of socks, and I've never had them felt. And yet all of these like stringy bits that I did not weave in felted really badly. And overall this shrunk quite a bit. So I was super surprised by that. But I knit this swatch, kind of lost ambition with how poorly that it went through the wash, but I liked the cream color enough to do what I consider a very sloppy swatch. So I was trying lots of different ideas with this. I basically have a section that's just plain old stockinette. I have a section that's a super, super wide rib, which I really like the idea of, and I spent a lot of time trying to like plot out a pattern for the super wide rib, and I wanted it to be a raglan, and I just couldn't make it work. To have the sleeves and front have the ribbing be symmetrical, at least with these numbers that I had done, it just didn't work. So I scrapped that idea. I tested a cable, thought that it was too autumnal for a like springy cardigan, and I tested like a little knit purl pattern, which I kind of felt like in this yarn, which it does feel cottony. It's not 100% cotton, but it's cotton wool blend. And with this texture, it just kind of felt like a baby blanket. Like it just doesn't quite have the look that I wanted for a sweater. So I have this swatch that I was kind of like, no, this swatch that also was a no. And so I returned to a swatch that I had done again this winter at some point in time that I was obsessed with. I was just like putting different knit and cable patterns together to do like a cable panel for a sweater. That was my intention going into it. I tested a couple of different cables for the main section you can see, but I was like, definitely want to do these bigger cables as opposed to these like stacked cables. I just didn't think that that worked, but I was really happy with the general idea of this. So I also swatched it in stockinette and cast this on just the other day. This has been flying off my needles, but this is another self-drafted. I put it on barber cords so I could like take some video of it, but let me try it on. Ugh, I'm so happy with how this is turning out so far. This is knit with Harrisville Designs Daylights yarn in the blue tone. So it's basically, it's a white base where they put like tiny little bits of, in this case, blue. They have a lot of different colors, and it just gives it's like off-white, but with a blue tint. And I think it's a really, really beautiful yarn. This is a non-superwash yarn, and I am feeling a little bit sensitive to it. If you have watched my videos for a long time, you will have seen that I have like developed a sensitivity to lanolin, and this is definitely a more like oily yarn. And I think a lot of it is like spinning oil. Like that's what it smells like. It's not like the cleanest smelling yarn, if I'm honest, but it does wash really, really beautifully. So I washed this swatch on like the hand wash cycle and laid it out to dry. So it has not gone into the dryer, but it has dried really, really nicely. And it has lost like all of that machine oily kind of smell that the unwashed yarn has. But I am so excited about this sweater. So I have this like cable stitch pattern. It's easiest to see on the back so far because I'm not done with the yoke yet, but it has the full cable panel on the back. It has the same cable panel on the front neckline. It is a really basic raglan. And then on the sleeves, I have basically like a fisherman's rib section that I think looks really cool. So I am going to make this to be an extremely cozy, very fall and winter sweater that I probably shouldn't have cast on in June, but I'm so excited about it. Truly, I am filming today on a Sunday. I cast on, I think on Friday night, and I'm almost done with the yoke. Considering that I am essentially making this up as I go because I'm not working from a pattern, it is going so well. I have like printed out my little like cable chart, but it is something that it's kind of becomes routine. You kind of know what you're doing after you've done it for a little bit, and I'm just so happy with it. So I'm very much looking forward to this being like my go-to fall sweater once it's done. I'm gonna put it on again. Woo. But I went for like it's not like a super low scoop neck because it'll have like at least an inch of like neckline ribbing on it. But I wanted there to be like some breathing room for the front neck, especially for me, since I'm a little bit sensitive to this yarn, especially as I'm knitting it. But I wanted it not to be like really tight crew neck because that just doesn't feel comfortable for me. And I wanted it to be something that you could like maybe wear a collared shirt underneath and have that stick out and look cute. But I'm really happy with how this is turning out so far. I have knit not quite the full yoke yet, like it is like right to my underarm. So I definitely want to have a little bit more breathing room. And I'm still on my first skein of yarn. So I'm almost done with this. So I have caked up the next ball, but this isn't using quite as much yarn as I expected because usually, you know, with cable patterns, even though it's not like as much of a yarn user as like a dip stitch or like brioche or something like that, it definitely uses more yarn than plain stockinette, but it's not like gobbling up all your yarn. So I have my next skein, I have a couple more skeins left, and I think what I'm probably going to do is a not too oversized fit, but I'm thinking like quite long sleeves. Like I want the sleeves to kind of come to your like knuckles so that it's very, very cozy, very warm. I'm like I have all the cozy vibes right now, even though we are heading like fully into summer. This yarn by Harrisville Designs it's a DK weight yarn. I just think it's so beautiful. Like it's just like everything that you really want in like a good quality sweater yarn. I really feel like this is going to wear really well, even though it is like a little bit smelly. Like I'm very sensitive to smells. So if you're not sensitive to smells, you might think that it's totally fine. But it really, to me, really smells like the spinning oil. So I am looking forward to washing this, but I just think that this is going to be like the most beautiful classic cable panel sweater. Didn't want to do like an all over cable. I wanted it to very much just be a center cable pattern. And with the raglan, I feel like it just makes it like very easy to wear for like a regular casual kind of sweater, not like a super fancy sweater. I'm all about it right now. And it's very much for me, the cables make it so like engaging to knit. Like you keep wanting to get to the next cable, which is why I am knitting this very quickly. So it's only been a couple of days and I've knit the vast majority of the yoke. So who knows, maybe by the time I do my next video, I might actually have this finished. I don't want to sit here and like toot my own horn with this because I'm like self-drafted it, but I'm feeling really good about it. And I think it's definitely something that I would consider turning into a pattern to sell. However, this is absolutely something that's going to need a lot more work in the grading process. I want to have like basically somebody to teach me how to do it. Like I want to learn how to grade a more complex like pattern like this to a size inclusive size range. So for me, I like know exactly where the cable pattern works, but to do that for like however many sizes it would need to be, it broke my brain a little bit to figure it out for me. So trying to figure it out for a bunch of different sizes is going to be a challenge. So it's something that I feel like there's got to be someone who could work one-on-one with me to teach me how to do it and to like check it and make sure it's correct when it's done. But I don't want to like ship it off to like someone who grades patterns like as their business. Like I want to learn how to do it myself. If you have any resources on that, please let me know. I've looked into we got sirens all over the place. I have read a lot of the content from Sister Mountain on pattern grading, and I have like a generally good idea of what I'm doing. Like I'm not going into it like totally blind, but I just think like with incorporating a cable pattern, the front neckline shaping, having a pattern on the sleeves, like I just need a little bit more oversight than what I'm capable of doing on my own. So if you have any resources for that, please let me know. I'm just like I really want to learn how to do pattern grading correctly instead of trying to figure it out completely on my own and making more work for myself than there really needs to be. But that is all of the yarny goodness that I have for you today. I hope you are having a good one, and I will see you next time. Bye.